Well, welcome to the Parent Zone Perspectives on Therapy podcast, where we dive into the heartfelt journeys of parents navigating therapy with their children. This podcast is a safe space for sharing real life experiences, insights, and the unique challenges that come with supporting a child's growth. Whether you're a parent, therapist, or simply interested in understanding the therapy journey, each episode provides honest perspectives to inform, inspire, and connect us all. Join us as we explore the many pathways of parenting through therapy, one story at a time. As we begin today, I'd like to acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people, the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded. I recognise their enduring connection to land, sea, and community, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I also extend my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening today and honour their ongoing contributions to our shared culture and knowledge. I'm very excited today to welcome Bec Seal, our very first guest on the Parent Zone Perspectives on Therapy podcast. Welcome, Bec. Thank you for taking the time to be with me today. And I would love it if you would take a moment to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Di. It's great to have this opportunity. My name's Bec. I'm mum to Indy. Indy's our only child. She is now 11. In my professional world, I'm a mental health social worker working child and adolescent mental health. And we're a family of 3. My husband is with us as well. We have lots of animals, bit of a zoo going on here. It's we live in South Australia, in Adelaide, which is a little bit of a distance from you, Di.
Yeah, it is. Thank goodness we have something like Zoom that can connect us, regardless of how far away we are geographically. We can still connect and be able to share these stories together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so well, thank you for introducing yourself and Indy, and I'm Sure Indy will be the feature character of this story that you are about to tell. Can you tell me a little bit about the moment when you realized that Indy might benefit from speech therapy?
Yeah, so Indy was about to turn 8. I suppose we were just sitting in the lounge room, as we would normally be as a family. Over a couple of weeks, this kind of thing in her voice kind of just sparked a bit of my attention, and I'd kind of, just notice it and then not really know what it was. And, like everything else with children, just think, oh, well, that's something, it'll probably pass with um, and then it kept happening again, and then I'd kind of looked to my partner just to see if he'd noticed it. We hadn't really kind of spoken about it
Right.
at that point. And then after a little bit I said to him, have you noticed that? So I suppose there was this moment that kind of just dropped, and like this kind of, I suppose that gut feeling that you get in your stomach when you think that something's wrong with your kid. And I was just like, what do I do about that? Like, I don't know another person that stutters. I don't know anyone that takes their kids to speech therapy. I knew a speech therapist through a parent craft group that I'd been to at the school before. So I just texted her and said, hey, this is kind of going on. And then I suppose I learned that not all, speeches do the same thing, and that it is quite a specialty.
Absolutely.
So she pointed us in, I suppose, the right direction, to a private speech therapy clinic. And we were having our first appointment within a few months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And through that whole process, building up to actually getting in for that first session, how are you feeling as a parent?
I suppose a lot of urgency. Like we need an appointment like yesterday.
Mm,
In my mind, it was, this can't be. We need to find how to fix this.
hmm
Yeah, she can't have this. And why does she have it? Um, yeah. So it felt like a long time between reaching out and having that appointment.
mm. What did you feel? How did you feel after that first appointment?
I suppose well, I felt hopeful. I suppose at that
Mm,
point, we were kind of introduced to the idea that she had turned 8, and what that means. What I've learnt that means. Further down the line, as well, is that the older your child is, the less likely that they will grow out of their stutter.
hmm
Um,
hmm
so I suppose though, at that point, the speech had kind of said that it's a bit more difficult, but I was still quite hopeful that we would just do. I think in my head I had like 16 or 18 sessions and we'd be done. It was quite a shock too because obviously, it was weekly sessions and the financial costs with that. And then on top of that, I suppose because she had such high communication anxiety, we were recommended to see a psychologist as well. So then there was another appointment every fortnight, and it
Mm.
just became really intense, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, how quickly did you realize that it wasn't going to be the 16 or 18 sessions that you initially thought?
I think it was a realization that I came to probably when we were introduced to Say Australia.
Okay.
Um, and it could have been said by our speaker before that, but maybe I just didn't hear that.
hmm
But yeah, for me, the penny kind of dropped when uh, we were kind of introduced to Say Australia and this kind of idea of not striving for fluency. That there's other kids out there that have this. There's other adults out there that have this. And yeah, I suppose it kind of blew my mind a bit around. Wait a minute, like we were, my understanding is that we try and get rid of this, right? Like, and now that there's this other idea that you kind of you can be all these amazing things with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite significant. And I suppose I probably had my doubts along the way, going, are we going to get there? Are we going to get to fluency?
Yeah.
So maybe a combination of all of that together.
Yeah, sure. So during that therapy process, maybe before you got introduced to, say, Australia, what would you say were some of the biggest challenges that you and Indy faced in that therapy journey?
I think the speech therapy homework was quite challenging. Uh, for like many families, I would know that trying to get any type of homework done is going to be a challenge, because normally those times that you do homework are either the start of the day or the end of the day.
Yep.
When you work full time, like and all the other things you got to do, like families aren't at their best at those two times.
Yeah. Fair.
Um,
100% agree.
so you come home trying to cook dinner, trying to do everything else, and then you got to force your kid who's perhaps had a big day, to do some speech therapy homework. Um, so yeah, that was a real challenge, and I suppose our speech was really good around saying, we as we go, we need to kind of just weigh up her, her sense of self, because I suppose we run the risk of it really impacting on her self-esteem.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of, monitoring that along the way. And our speech was just really creative. She's outside of the speech world. She's, does some performance type of things.
Yeah,
That
cool.
was really helpful to do things a little bit differently. But it was a lot of energy. Like it was, what's she interested in? How can you make this? How can we make this fun? How can we make it? That it's something that she wants to do. So, I found myself, getting her to interview me as mummy robot, and she was child robot for robot talking. And then, we would create these plays together. I would dress up, she would dress up, we'd get dad to dress up. We'd create these videos about what stuttering is and all the different parts to that. So it was quite full on, to get all of that done.
That's a lot of extra. It's not just a little like a worksheet or something like that. Well, I mean, because let's face it, worksheets don't work, right? So you figured that out pretty quickly and you got creative. But when you're talking about the mental energy that it takes on top of the mental load of the standard mental load, that's a big extra.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so just constantly trying to be creative. And even when I'd be I might be away for work or something, and I would find time to record a video of me being mummy robot to send to her, so then she could send me a video of being, child robot. So it was just how can we kind of get this therapy in a creative way that isn't going to highlight that she's the problem.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
so obviously that was tricky on top of everything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Did you find through all of that that your relationship with Indy was impacted in any way?
because I guess it kind of lost its fun.
Mm,
She kind of started to feel like, why are we doing this all the time? You're making me do this. And then, I can vividly recall times when both my husband and I would get really cranky at her because she wasn't willing to participate in speech therapy homework.
mm,
And that kind of just do it. Like it's just 5 minutes. Let's just do it, and it's over with. Like similar to let's just brush your teeth. Let's just
yeah,
jump in the shower.
yeah.
Um, and there's videos that I look back of that, and it just breaks my heart that we were acting so cranky towards her, but I
Mm,
suppose behind that just felt it's such this anxiety that you need to do this to get better.
mm.
Um,
And also,
and I think
I was just wondering what the impact, that financial impact as well. So you were paying out a lot of money for speech therapy and psychology. You were doing a lot of extra mental load in terms of being super creative with the homework. And then if she wasn't really willing to participate, how did that make you guys feel?
for sure, I suppose financially. That adds another pressure, adds more, work that needs to be done outside the home,
Mhm.
adds to the shame of going to the next speech therapy appointment and you haven't done your homework.
Mm.
Um, like it, and then you go, well, what am I paying for? If she hasn't done it, then what am I paying for?
Yeah,
That could have gone to something else.
yeah.
Um, so it really has such a wide impact. And I think even in my world in mental health, we can kind of um, uh, think that we just get people to do homework and it's just about the homework. But I think it's really not on the forefront of our minds the impact and what it takes to kind of get that done. And I think there was a point where homework became the priority over our connection, really.
Right. And how did you get past that? How did you change that in, can you look back in hindsight and see what you were able to do, or if you were?
Yeah. I suppose it there were moments where it just didn't sit right, and
Okay.
and I think as a parent going through this journey, you second guess yourself so much.
Mm.
Like am I doing enough? Am I doing it right? The spreadsheet with all the numbers of how intense it was today. I swear I never did that right. um, I still didn't understand what it means, I think now. Um, yeah, so yeah, you're always second guessing yourself,
Yeah.
and trying to figure out when you push, when you pull back. But I think for me, it was this just doesn't feel right. This is, it's that it wasn't the parent that I wanted to be, and I suppose it
Mm.
made me start to move towards, well, and then maybe it coincided at the same time as that penny dropping for me around that there was another option, but it kind of led me to a place where I was just like, the priority shouldn't be fluency. The priority should be my relationship with my daughter.
Yeah.
And if I'm not her greatest ally, then who will be?
Mm.
And at the same time, I suppose I was starting to go, well, hang on a minute, maybe this is just a natural difference in our world, and maybe the problem doesn't lie with her, but the problem lies with our ability to listen. Um, yeah, so I suppose that's where I kind of landed with that.
Sure. And so you said that you got introduced to Say Australia. Um, was there, in the process of being introduced to them, did you come have any small victories, big victories that stand out in her progress and how she presented herself and all of that?
Yeah, I think it was at the time where I think COVID had just happened, and Say Australia had put a lot of their programs online, thankfully, because obviously
Mm,
they're based in Melbourne. And
yeah.
I think the first win was just having her sit in front of the screen. To be honest, like I didn't care if she talked, just having access to other kids that stutter. Um,
So that was like a group meeting.
Yeah, so I suppose they call them their Zoom hangs.
Cool.
I
Yeah.
think there's actually one tomorrow. Yeah, they just do fun things online, which kind of blew my mind a bit, right? Like I'm like, how many fun things can you do online?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a huge achievement, especially because I suppose part of Indy's journey was that yeah, that communication anxiety, and being selectively mute at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, I'd be kind of eagerly listening at the door just to see if she was actually saying something in the group. Of course, the safe spaces, they're not made to speak. They're invited to if they wish.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
yeah, I was listening to see whether or not she spoke. So yeah, that was pretty cool when I suppose I started to see her speak, and yeah, contribute, I suppose, in social kind of interactions. And one of the really helpful things that we did with our speechy was focus on things that we could do
Mhm.
rather than targeting her individually for treatment. It was, how can we emotion coach her? Because if you are regulate with your emotions, then that helps your speech. So
Mm.
yeah, we did that. We also did, how can we scaffold her in conversations? Like how can we kind of create a space where she can jump in if she wants to, but she's not directly being asked questions.
Yeah, great.
So yeah, noticing that those things were kind of helping in these situations when we were interacting with people
Hmm.
was really, really helpful. And then,
Yeah.
along the way, I think the other achievements were, probably the biggest one at that time was the fact that she went to Melbourne from Adelaide to go to the Say camp.
Oh, wow.
So 4 nights, 5 days. And I remember her saying to me, the night before that she was really, really worried about going, and just said to her, you might find your people here. I did also bribe her with a Roblox gift card. And then, at the end, she's like, right, where's my gift card?
They don't forget, do they? Regardless of how much fun they've had, they don't forget the bribe. No way.
Yeah, and then we went to when I went to pick her up on the last day, one of the say staff members said to me, like, last night was a pretty emotional night. Like, Indy kind of, spoke in front of the group, and it just had everyone in tears. Like, all the volunteers just lost it after that. So yeah, and then I've seen a photo of that afterwards. Where she's got this microphone to her mouth. And I think, what they would say was that she was probably quite quiet for much of the camp.
Yeah.
So there she is with a microphone at the end, saying something along the lines of "Thanks for cheering me on and believing in me." So that was pretty big at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, interested to get your perspective on how you were feeling, first of all, when you sent her off to camp, and then when you picked her up from camp. So, I mean, to give you an example, my son's off on a day excursion today to Rottnest Island. They've had to go on a ferry, and I am so anxious today. I just can't, I want to know exactly what's happening all the time. So how did you go with sending her off to camp for that long?
I know, it was bizarre. Like, she didn't know anyone really. Like, it wasn't like there was any, like, I don't think any of the kids she had really connected with online were there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was managing my anxiety, but I was like, I've got to manage mine so she manages hers. So, we're driving from Ballarat to Creswick, and she's like, I feel sick, and I'm like, that's okay. Of course, this is all part of the journey. It's new, it'll settle down. And I'm just driving, thinking, like, can we just get there? I just need to get there. And then every night, every night they would upload photos of the day to the parent hub, and they were having a lot of trouble on their end with the internet, and I was having trouble on the internet on my end too. So quite often it would take them. I think Rich was uploading them until like 2 o'clock in the morning or something. And then so then I was in the caravan park in Ballarat, like in the cabin in this bunk bed where I was sleeping in. Trying to get the internet to work so I can see these photos, just so I can get a glimpse of if she was all right. Like, but ultimately, she knew that she could ring at any time, and she didn't. So and then we went on the Thursday. They had a parent day where we went and visited, and they did a performance, and so that was the day before she actually got picked up from camp. And so we've been waiting for this all week, right? Like, me and my mum had been sitting in the cabin just looking at each other, because we were like, well, we just wait, right? We can't do anything while we're here. We just wait. We were that nervous. And then we rock up, and then we see her, and she runs up to us, and she's like, hi, bye. And I'm just like, oh.
What?
Yep, she was off. And then it was probably one of the first times, I mean, there's been plenty since because she's becoming a teenager, but probably one of the first times where I was like, oh my God, you're like, I am not the center of your world anymore. Like, you just dismissed me. So it was pretty challenging from that perspective, but really amazing that, she felt comfortable enough to, do that. And then we drove home, and we were just sitting in the lounge room, and she said to me, Mum, it's really interesting what, that speech therapy tells you that it's not okay to stutter, whereas, say, Australia tells you that it's okay to stutter. And I said to her, which one would you prefer out of those two? And she said that it's okay to stutter. And I suppose that's where it really, and just to note as well, like our speech therapy never said that. Our speech therapist never said that to her, but that's obviously what she took from it.
She kind of implied that.
Yeah, unknowingly. I don't. Yeah, she wouldn't ever, like, if she, had the opportunity to know that, I'm sure she'd be horrified. But yeah, it just made me think, oh, it's worth checking out. What people are thinking, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose that's where we started to kind of allow her to have some ownership over what she wanted to do. Like, and even now, we would say the same thing to her. Just say, um, what do you want to do? Like, that you can always go back to speech therapy. And there's been once when she has asked for that in the context of a really challenging day.
Yeah.
But by the time we got an appointment, she's like, yeah, nah. Yeah, so she knows that she can always choose to go back if she wishes to. And even now she's becoming a teenager and more focused on friends at home, so she has stepped away from, say, Australia a bit now as well.
Yeah.
But I kind of see that that's a good thing, like that it was there for the time that we needed it to be for her. Obviously, I'm still involved, but yeah.
You say so you're still involved with, say, Australia?
Yeah. So I support the Facebook page that supports parents, and yeah, just available for these type of things, or liaising with parents and offering support as well.
Yeah, awesome. So if you could share one piece of advice or encouragement with other parents who are just at the beginning of the journey of investigating speech therapy or any therapy really, what would that be?
I think that it's okay, that we live in a world as parents where we don't want our kid to be different, because if they're different, they get picked on and they might not have the same advantages as other kids moving forward. But when you think about it, there's many kids in your life that might have, diabetes, or, ADHD, or, lots of different things. And everyone is unique in themselves, and those differences don't necessarily have to be a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I've met some really amazing people that stutter now, and I think that was really, really wonderful. To be able to meet these adults that stutter and go, hang on a minute, you're one of the most amazing people I've ever met, and you have a stutter, so then I know that my kid is going to be okay. But one of the other things that I think, parents at any point along the journey, I'd really like them to know is it's not your fault. It's not your fault that the stutter's there. It's not your fault that you can't, get speech therapy homework done. And I suppose parents often, struggle with that. Am I pushing enough? Or do I need to step back? What if I give up speech therapy and it makes it worse? Like, that's my fault if that happens. And I suppose what I would say is that it's not your fault, and giving up speech therapy doesn't mean the end of the world, and that it can be there to be helpful when it needs to be. But the number one thing that's most important is the connection with your child.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's all very sound advice. And I think, like you've said to Indy, at any time she can go back to speech therapy, and speech therapy might change over the years, and it might look different the next time, or she might decide that she doesn't want it or need it, or but I also think I really acknowledge in there as well that you've shifted some of the responsibility to a joint decision between you and Indy, and really allowing Indy to have some say in her journey through this. And I think that's really powerful as well. How did that feel for you, shifting that focus to giving her some of that say in the process?
Yeah, well, obviously, as a parent, asking your 11-year-old to decide, something so significant can be quite alarming, because, some like just like brushing their teeth. Sometimes, like if they had a choice, they wouldn't be brushing their teeth. Um, yeah, and I suppose for me, I just felt so settled with that. Like I just felt so settled with, you know, not forcing, because I suppose forcing kind of felt, I suppose for lack of a better word, abusive, kind of like,
Mm,
um, yeah, that being made to have treatment that suggests that there's something wrong with you, um, didn't feel right. So, I suppose what felt right, yeah, is that giving her that choice. And, if she comes back in 10 years' time and says, you did the wrong thing, Mum, by not making me go to speech therapy, I think my thought at the time will be, well, I suppose these things are great in hindsight, but I know that I made the right decision for us at the time.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a really beautiful place for us to finish up this conversation. So, thank you, Bec, for your open and honest responses. And I can see that you've, spent quite some time reflecting back on that journey and from where you began to where you are now. And I really appreciate that you've taken the time to share that with us. And I can tell right now there's going to be very many parents and therapists who get a lot out of listening to that and will be able to, reflect on some of that in their own journeys as well.
Yeah, thanks, Di. It's been a wonderful opportunity, to be able to share, because I guess, yeah, thank you for creating that space, because, yeah, parents of children that stutter often don't get that space. So
Mm.
creating it.
I think parents who are navigating anything, regardless of if it's a stutter or any difference that comes up, I think there's just very limited places where they can get that support. So I think even though a parent might be listening to this and their child might not have a stutter, they might have something else happening for them, I think they're still going to be able to get a lot out of what you shared with us today. So thank you very much.
No worries, my pleasure.